This is Up in the Cloud goes 795 week 5 already, which, as I told my other class, means at the end of this week, we're 1/3 of the way through this particular course and this semester. Means we're 1/3 closer to holiday time, New Year's, and all sorts of grand things. I am busily, I shouldn't say busy, I don't use the word busy. I'm happily working on a calendar project, a daily pull-off calendar. We're going to send it to the publisher tomorrow. A 365-day calendar of Southern Indiana. It's all set and ready to roll. And so I just met with someone where final touches were put on it. So it's my first experience doing something like that. Our guest tonight has many experiences in different areas. She likes to throw her lines in the water and see what comes out, as they say. And right now, she's got a couple opportunities she's considering, and they're considering her as well. Erin Crisp got her EDD 3 years ago. In May 2019, she went through commencement with me. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And we hung out at Mai Tai and some other places when she was in town, and her husband as well. She loves that Bloomington, but she lives a little north of here called Marion, Indiana, because she was working at Indiana Wesleyan University for a long time. And you would see her because she was on the commercials for Indiana Wesleyan. She was involved in a lot of quality control and assessment issues. I think a director of something. I don't even have her resume in front of me, but she was really in charge of a whole crew of people who are helping ramp them up in the age of online teaching and learning, and just in general, all face-to-face courses, getting them to be high quality as well. And we looked at issues of feedback within those courses for her qualifying exam. I say we, she looked at it and I learned from it, and we published together in Tech Trends. That article was her qualifying exam. So she's going to talk to us about the publishing process and how to take your qualifying exam and actually publish it and make it a real world, authentic experience. And so that's important. I think that's going to be one takeaway. Another thing that Erin's going to do for us tonight is kind of give you a sense of the job opportunities in the field that she's seen during the 3 years since she got her doctorate degree from IU. She also had a podcast show, or at least was involved in it because I was interviewed for it for a while. So she's been on TV, she's had a podcast show. Now she's like this, not the CTO, not the CIO, maybe Chief Learning Officer?
Chief Academic Officer.
Chief Academic Officer of an ed tech startup kind of company. And so she's going to tell us a little bit more about what they do and what it is. And Sunmei has worked for a couple of ed tech startup companies in San Francisco area. And Sunmei's very involved in mobile learning because she's an engineer type. And so she's really smarter than I'm ever going to be. So Erin, can you maybe start us off with telling us about how long, I'm really curious now, how long did it take you to get your EDD? How efficient were you? And what kinds of things did you find beneficial to you in getting completed, getting it done? What did you do really towards the end? Little tips that they can give you that get you that over the final hurdles. What was it?
Yeah, so I think I finished in exactly 4 years, and I was working full-time. That whole time I had a full-time job as a couple jobs, first as a director of assessment and then as the executive director for the Center for Teaching and Learning. So I led the instructional design team and the faculty developers in the university setting. And I think one thing that really helped me was first to carve out time. You know, obviously, if it isn't on my calendar, it's probably not going to happen. So carve out time, small chunks of time during the week. Usually I tried to do an hour or two every night to stay caught up on discussion boards. And then larger chunks of time on the weekends, on Saturdays or Sundays, when I would do a lot of research and paper writing, things that require a long period of time for focus. I did try to do one weekend away every semester, away from my family, where I would go somewhere else for the whole weekend and just spend the whole weekend focusing on writing usually or research. So that was helpful. My family was incredibly supportive, which through the journey, which I'm very lucky for that.
Wait a minute, where'd you go?
Oh, so often I would go to Brown County to like the lodge or a cabin, somewhere out in a natural setting without a lot of distractions.
So Michelle Gribbins, who you may know, Michelle. Yeah. So Michelle kicked her family out, didn't really kick them out, but her kids went to Boy Scout camp this summer, and her husband went with them. They were gone for a couple of weeks, and she finished her proposal. So instead of you going somewhere, so there's a couple options in there, but I like the Brown County idea. How much did you pay a night for the rooms? Do you remember?
I don't remember. No, I don't remember. We also had a camper for some of that time too. And sometimes I would just go to the camper and camp in a campground for the weekend and stay in the camper. That's a nice, cheap alternative.
So did you have access to the internet in a camper?
Yeah, so I used my mobile data from my phone a lot, and it was pretty good enough to be able to do what I needed to do. I would download a lot of articles ahead of time, so I had everything, and all I was doing was reading and synthesizing. So
escape space.
Yes.
And we'll be talking about space in here later in the semester, about writing spaces. So this is very appropriate. And I'm going to talk about my writing space, but I have a couple other alums coming in, recent alums in our PhD program, talking about their spaces for writing. So what other kind of tips do you have besides the escape plan?
Yeah. So I think another tip I had is work smarter whenever you can. So I had a full-time job that thankfully there was a lot of overlap between my work and the things that I was expected to accomplish and my goals in the workplace and research that I could be doing for my instructional design program. So for example, I chose to research feedback. I started as the director of assessment during the first 2 years of my program. So obviously I was looking at a ton of feedback, data, qualitative, quantitative, feedback from our students in our online classes. And so I was kind of doing my research while I was doing my day job at work. So anytime you can find overlap between what you're doing at work for your job and research that you could do that would make you both better at your job and that you could use for academic purposes, that's a win-win all the way around. And so my employer would even give me some time every week that I could use on research and coursework because it was so closely related to what I was doing for my job.
So when you're getting ready for quals, read the research literature and summarize it. Even if it doesn't get in your comprehensive paper, it can find a place in your dissertation later on. But the thing is, if you shape that comprehensive paper in a good enough fashion, your advisors or people on your program committee might say, this is publishable. I can help you take it that next step. And that's exactly what we did. I think both Dr. Brush and I both said that to you. I was your advisor. I mean, you could have just as easily worked with you and get it to completion. One of my 2 qualifying exams was published in an SSCI journal, top tier with no revisions. I thought it was the only time it's ever happened. I got spoiled on the first one. The second one was actually the better paper I never published. One was on collaborative writing and social cognition and audience awareness. One was on cooperative collaborative reading strategies. The reading one never got published. The writing one did, got in written communication. Anyway, so you can publish these things, literature reviews. It's not typical. It's not necessarily really easy to do, but it is possible. So every time you write something, you should contemplate, is there an outlet? Do I want to have it? And in some cases, you want to have that published because it's something that can benefit you at work. You can have it as a handout to other people. It might be a summary of tips and guidelines. If it's very, it's a very applied piece. So Erin, keep going.
Yeah, so my literature review, I think probably the most beneficial aspect of presenting the qual's comprehensive question in the lit review with Dr. Bonk and Dr. Brush were helping me find outlets, avenues that would find that particular topic and type of publication valuable because they have a great awareness of which journals are going to expect quasi-experimental design and which journals are more practitioner focused and everything in between. And so they really helped me recognize that Tech Trends was a good fit for the type of writing and the type of question that I had tried to answer.
Now, I don't know if I've sent the paper to everyone, but you probably should have a copy. I have a copy on my computer here somewhere. Kim, who are you calling over?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in my office and I have students that are coming out of class, so they can see in my office and I'm waiting. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay.
I'm listening and I heard about the Tech Trends.
Okay, I thought maybe you were at home and we could see your dog or your cat or something, but okay, no, because you look so comfortable, relaxed there. So, so Erin's put this in. So is this, so we have a PDF. Okay, great. Oh, that's right. Okay. That was a preprint or what was that?
Nope, this is the one that's published on their website.
Okay.
It's open now. So
was it open access?
No, it wasn't at first. They keep it like sequestered or whatever for a year, I think, and then it's open access after that. So it's open access now. Right.
And it is 2018. So this is before you defended your dissertation. She had a publication from this. So that was rather quick.
Yeah, but you were hugely helpful in helping me refine it. So I was shocked.
It's not normal. If it's not, I told someone today, sometimes it takes 2 years, sometimes it takes 2 months. It's just such wide variations. And the journals, some get backlogged. And so ETR&D is really backlogged right now. It's a journal to avoid. It used to be the Journal of Computing in Higher Ed was really backlogged. So we know because of computers in education, really backlogged typically and hard to get in. And because of the pandemic, a lot of people are researching our field. And so the journals in this field have increased their impact factors. All of them have moved up in the educational research listing of journals. The ed tech or learning design and technology journals, a lot of them are in the top 10% now that they weren't prior to the pandemic. It's really kind of interesting. So what did you talk? You remember what you presented on last time in here, Erin?
Quals, preparing probably for qualification exams. Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, you can. You have any slides to put up here that you have developed from last time?
I did put a few slides together about
defending, I think, right?
Here's about well, for this time around, I did about alternate academic ideas.
Okay, right. Okay, so let's wait on that. So so Erin's going to tell you about alternative job opportunities. But before you do that, why don't you give them some of the advice you gave on qualifying exams and on defending a dissertation and so forth. Then we'll move to that.
Yeah, sure. So my next 2 publications were in EDUCAUSE, and those both came from dissertation research. And I think one of the things I learned as I went through the lit review, quals, dissertation research process is that if you concept map all of these concepts that you are studying and researching and becoming an expert in, you're doing your 10,000 hours of study to become an expert in a particular aspect of education in some keywords. And that concept map, those little bubbles have connections and overlap with one another. Anytime you can find those places of overlap between concepts, it's a great opportunity to take your research, find an audience for it. For me, EDUCAUSE is a great fit for the type of research that I like to do. So I try to publish with them every year. So I've had an article in 2020 and another one in 2021 with them. And a researcher at University of Manchester, maybe it's in the UK. She and I just put together a chapter proposal because she found me from one of those articles, has a very similar research interest, and we submitted a chapter proposal for a book related to assessment and feedback. So those opportunities come. EDUCAUSE is a more practitioner-focused publication, but it helps you network and find people with similar interests, I would say.
So wait a minute, we need to tell them about the opportunities in EDUCAUSE because they're varied. They used to have a journal called EDUCAUSE Review and another one called EDUCAUSE Quarterly. One of those are defunct, I believe now, and they only have one of the 2 left. Which one is the one that you published in?
Review.
Review. Okay. Is it a monthly or quarterly?
I believe it's monthly now.
Okay. So it's free and open access. So EDUCAUSE Review. And Merve Bazliga, my former advisee, is working in IU learning spaces, and she's published 3 pieces on active learning spaces in EDUCAUSE Review as well. So it's very popular. It has a large audience, but EDUCAUSE itself is more for IT people, the big conference, and it's all capital letters, EDUCAUSE. The smaller conference, EDUCAUSE Learning Initiatives, is more for the pedagogy people. So I want to clarify, what are the outlets? They also have articles that would be like 7 things you need to know about blogging, 7 things you need to know about MOOC, 7 things you need to know about learning analytics, 7 things you need about, so they have those kinds of pieces. And now they sponsor the Horizons Report. They used to not, it used to be the New Media Consortium, but the annual Horizons Report for K-12 and higher ed and community colleges predicts what's going to happen in the next year, the next 2 to 3 years, and the next 5 years, the technology trends, very short 1-page, 2-page summaries of AI in education or gamification or whatever. So the annual report that comes out in January or February and early in the year is very valuable and free. And so a couple of things to clarify about EDUCAUSE. There's a conference, big one. I don't necessarily recommend you go. You can go if you run an IT center. There's a small one, EDUCAUSE Learning Initiatives. Highly recommend that you think about going to that. And EDUCAUSE Review versus other magazine or other technical report options. It's quite varied in there. So just to clarify, many people related to learning design technology or IST are members of EDUCAUSE, but I don't see many of our students joining EDUCAUSE. It's really close. In fact, our dean now, Stacy Maroney, did go to EDUCAUSE because she was the VP of information of digital learning. So she went to both LE and the big conference. So we're almost in that field. So, and Erin, have you gone to EDUCAUSE?
Just when it was in Indianapolis one time, because it was local, but like you said, it's very heavily IT focused. I'm not sure it's a great overlap for a lot of what instructional design does.
Yeah, they reject my proposals, but that's the big conference. The little conference, smaller conference, I've spoken at, I've given a keynote at, and something else. So you'll meet more people in the IST space at EDUCAUSE Learning Initiatives. Okay. I'll let you move on what you were going to say. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm happy to go wherever you want me to go. So I would say a couple other key just tips for preparing for quals. One, I did have trouble with internet. A lot of people don't probably, and maybe it's a lot better now than it used to be, but I always worked remotely off campus. See me saying, no, it's not better. So I worked remotely off campus, and coming to campus for quals was one of the only times that I was on the local intranet. And so I actually used my mobile hotspot from my phone as a backup when I get kicked off and that kind of thing. So I'd highly recommend that because it can be very stressful if you can't have internet access. Another tip, I use OneNote notebook. I put a whole bunch of research and notes from all my classes into my OneNote notebook in kind of an organized way. And OneNote allowed me to put in a keyword to search, and it would pull any note from any class that I had taken over my 3 years, so that I could find pieces of research from my notes. I could find authors and studies and articles and those kinds of things. So having everything in OneNote so that I could search to pull evidence into my responses was also super helpful.
Any questions so far for Erin? So I will say students aren't taking quals on campus anymore.
Oh, okay.
So most are taking them from home.
Great.
And they can come in, but it's not required anymore.
All right.
And because of the pandemic, we couldn't require it. So just lots of society has changed somewhat. So
yeah, for sure.
So why don't we move on to your dissertation defense, advice about,
Um, So I was, I did all my work remote, came into Bloomington. Do you do dissertation defense in person, or is a remote option now?
It's option. I recommend in person, but I'd say it's about 50-50. It's getting to be more so face-to-face as people get more comfortable meeting in a room. But 2 years ago, it was all online. I mean, of course.
Yeah. So I came to Bloomington the night before and, got ready that night, got comfortable with the space, figured out where I was going to go. You don't want to be stressed about that on the day of. I would say when you're in your dissertation defense, just remember, it's intimidating, right? But just remember that you have spent a huge amount of time studying and learning about a specific topic, and you've conducted your own research maybe and learned some things, and you're there to share what you've learned. And you can share that with confidence. So recognize that you have some expertise and some things that you've learned to share. I would say just go in with that knowledge. You're going to get hard questions about methods or why you made this choice versus this choice, or why you interpreted data or something this way instead of a different way. I would say you own your decisions. I made this decision because X, Y, and Z. And provide your reasons for that. But of course, we're always open to input and feedback, and there is an opportunity to make revisions in order to have your dissertation pass. And so I had a few little minor revisions to make, but nothing too major, and was able to pass, and it was great. Felt awesome.
No one's is perfect, except for Rob Elliott, who was our guest earlier this semester. And he had no revisions. And so it's very unusual. So plan on some revisions. It can take a couple of days. It can take a week, can take a couple of weeks, can take a couple of months, but no longer, I think, than 6 months, I think, is the maximum we allow for revisionary process, which is a good thing. You don't want to be dragging it on forever. You want to get it done as soon as possible. There's fees involved and other kinds of things. So any questions so far? Go ahead, Simi.
How long did you spend to work on dissertation? So after, finalizing data collection, so how long did you spend time?
1 semester. I had done a lot of the lit review and the research, conducting the research, analyzing the data. That was definitely the most time consuming part. After I had all of that done, the writing, the actual just putting it together and putting words on paper felt easy. That the last, 2-3 months definitely felt the easiest to me.
Anything else? So why don't you go to that third part, Erin, the part about job opportunities and alt education jobs.
Yeah, alternative academic. This is something I've been learning about. I'm going to share my screen.
Are you reading about this in Inside Higher Ed?
Yeah, well, Joshua Kim, I'll show you the book I've been reading, right?
Yeah, right.
Learning Innovation in the Future of Higher Education. So that's where I started, was reading this book where he kind of defines what an alternative academic is. I'd always felt that a role as a traditional academic, a tenure track faculty member, was not a great fit for me and my interests. So I was trying to find where is the best fit for me. And a lot of what they write about, Joshua Kim and Edward Maloney in this book, really felt like more of what I was aiming at to learn and to do with my career. So roles that include things like consulting, managing, contributing to professional associations, professional presentations, peer-reviewed publications are still an option for people in this role, but it's not a central focus. They often have titles like director, chief learning or academic officer, which is my title now, or principal consultant. And if you think about where they work, in the book, they talk about them working in higher ed. But since then, I've really been learning about all sorts of types of organizations. Anybody who teaches anything, which is a lot of different organizations, have an interest in hiring professionals who know some things about teaching and design and instruction.
Erin,
So
can I have you go back for a slide just so I highly recommend this book. And there's a second book by Brian Alexander that's blue in nature, and it's also on the future of higher education. The two of them came out in 2020, both from Johns Hopkins Press. And Brian has a weekly show on the future of education using a tool called Shindig that you can subscribe to. Every Thursday he has a guest. Joshua has a blog post every day, like writing an article in Inside Higher Ed, which is free if you sign up for Inside Higher Ed. Joshua is very prolific in his writing, and I think he's taken a lot of those Inside Higher Ed blog posts and made it into this book. What's interesting about Joshua, he's married to a Korean woman, Sunmei, and he took her last name. Instead of the wife taking the man's name, he took her last name. Her name was Kim. So it's kind of an interesting little side nugget there. Anyways, he's a real approachable person if you want to write to him. Brian Alexander is as well. And both are brilliant people, and both books. I think I read most of Brian's book in the voting line during 2020. It's not short, but it's a fairly easy read. They write well, and and there are many issues that they cover in these books that are important to read as someone who's graduating. In fact, this was one of the last slides I had in my talk last night to South Africa. I had this book and Brian's book in there as parting thoughts. So it was thanks, Erin, for reminding me of that.
yeah, happy to. We had them on our podcast too, on our Digital Learn podcast, Kurt, the same one you were on. So
right.
They're very approachable, very conversational.
Oh, and if you've had 511 with me, you've read from Joshua Kim in weeks 14 and 15. And you've read the articles on the jobs in the field, because I put that in weeks 14 and 15. So you may remember coming across that name, those of you who had 511 with me. And if not, just go to my homepage and just go to the 511 syllabus. It's right on the homepage there.
Great. So just a tiny bit about my alt-ac role right now. So I consult for a software development team. The company is called Campus. I lead a team of instructional designers and media developers. Because of my role in the company, they asked me to contribute thought leadership in the field of higher ed for business development purposes. I read a lot of research on the higher ed landscape and kind of summarize it down into executive summaries and things to provide to our leadership team. And I still have opportunities to present at conferences. I did a keynote talk in Belgium a few months ago, which was great, really fun. And I still get opportunities to publish. So you get a little bit of the academic life, but I also am playing this role in a corporate business kind of environment, which is great. Any questions?
And you presented with IST alum Brian Beatty, I believe. He was at the conference as well, the founder of the High Flex model.
Yes, we got to have breakfast together before our presentations, and we didn't know each other before the conference, but we had a mutual friend in Kurt Bonk, so we got to meet and get to know each other.
I'm the node.
The connection point. So this is an example of what our company does. We create these amazing pieces of video instruction. This happens to be a trailer video for a course. So our video team wins awards for the videos that they create. If you're familiar with Masterclass or Outlier, that's the kind of quality of video and imagery that the team is putting together for these courses. So one of the things that I have been talking with folks about, both in instructional design, actually Brian and I talked about this at the conference. If you ever get this question, like, what is an instructional design professional? I don't know if anybody else gets this, but like people in my family, my mom, she doesn't understand what an instructional designer is, right? It's not a field that's been around for a long time. And so one of the comparisons that we can make sometimes that I think is a little bit helpful for people is instructional designer in education is similar to an MBA in business. And if you start imagining the role that way, like an instructional designer for an educational organization is as versatile as an MBA would be for business. You can do a lot of things with an instructional design degree. So these are just some of the ideas that I've been thinking about these are what an MBA does. And I'll show you in a second the similarities with instructional design. But like an MBA, a person with a master's in business administration, which I don't have, they have to have awareness of global forces. They have to effectively communicate. They're connected via associations. They have value adding skills in specific areas like finance or marketing. And every business hires them because of their business goals. And I think of the same way for instructional design. Every educational organization needs instructional designers. They have value adding skills that attract and retain talent in organizations. They belong to global organizations. We maintain an awareness of this global external forces that impact the way people learn. We're as focused on organizational development as we are on individual development, or we can be. And we can advance the work of a strategic plan with an organization. So I think you can take a lot of what you're learning in your instructional design degree and think about it in a business context. Businesses that are related, that have some sort of relationship with education, which, I mean, we know the ed tech world is just blowing up. There are millions and billions of dollars spent every year now in ed tech companies. So there's lots of opportunity for instructional design in these education focused companies that help. They're kind of on the sidelines of education, colleges and K-12. So just a couple categories of career possibilities. We know the ones on the left and in the middle, right? So education, post-secondary, K-12, you've got professors, district curriculum leaders, directors of centers for teaching and learning, instructional designers. That's one world with its own set of organizations. You've got another world, the talent development world, with organizations like the Association for Talent Development or Human Resources Management. Those jobs are things like chief learning officer, talent development manager, human performance specialist. But then I think there's this whole new segment, newer-ish segment of roles that are education adjacent, and they're connected to technology, especially educational technology, apps, software. I mean, I am the only academic that works with a team of 15 software developers right now. And these are the kinds of things they're looking for. They're looking for principal consultants who have instructional design background and expertise, senior success manager, AVP of strategic leadership, VP of product development. They're not roles that sound like education jobs, but really what they're looking for are people with an understanding of educational technology and strategy in order to do these jobs. So that's it. That's kind of what I was thinking.
So questions for Erin? Comments?
Hi, Erin. How much technology is involved in your own aspect of the work? You did say something about you work with programmers and all that. And some of us come from let's say my background is pure science, first of all. Yeah, then education, instructional systems technology. In as much as I'm a bit familiar with things here or there, I'm not a programmer. So in cases like that, you're like, okay, where exactly do I fit?
Yeah.
So for you, how did that come about? What do you think?
So I'm not a programmer. I don't program in any language. I think I've learned to work within the structures of software development. So I know what it means to be an agile software development team. I participate in our daily stand-ups. I know what a Scrum is. So a lot of the terminology, you have to learn how to participate in those structures. I know what a spec doc is. I know how important it is to have requirements before you start a software development project. I can do bug tracking and testing. So I know how to participate as someone who's going to add value to the team, but I don't have to be a computer scientist or know how to actually write the code in order to be of value to the team.
Those skills you just mentioned, did you pick them up while working here, or you had those skills before you started working here?
So I read a couple of books about software development and Agile, just because I kept hearing it and reading it, and I wanted to understand more, but I wouldn't say they were skills that I had necessarily, but I knew enough in order to be able to communicate and use the right words with the team, but I didn't have those skills before entering the job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any problem with understanding technology related terms? That's because I think that your background is, purely education. So what is the biggest challenge you learned the software development?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, almost every week I think, man, I wish I knew more about how to read the code and understand it. And just this week, I learned how to use the developer tools in Google so that I can at least copy and paste code when there's an error message and submit the actual code to the development team so they can better solve the problems and troubleshoot and find the errors and where they're coming from. So I pick up things like that all the time that are helpful. But yeah, I often feel like I could be more effective if I did know more about the computer science and the coding side of things. They try to reassure me that they've got it under control. They don't need me to know all that. They just need me to be the academic person to test things and make sure that it matches what schools are looking for, schools and teachers are looking for. So.
Thank you. You are amazing. I never thought about that. Even, actually I'm a programmer, but sometimes it's really hard to understand the new terms, right? You're amazing. And then one more question. So what is the most important benefit after getting EDD degree? So what is the difference before and after?
Well, I mean, it definitely opens doors. Having the degree opens doors for all sorts of opportunities that not having the degree, I don't think those doors would have opened, like speaking at conferences, publishing, being recognized as someone who has expertise. The degree just carries with it kind of an instant recognition, a trust that you probably know something about education because you have this degree. But I think it's also given me confidence to conduct research, not experimental research, but to ask questions and to know how to critically evaluate sources in order to find answers to those questions. And before, I don't think I would have felt the confidence to be able to evaluate accurately resources and research to find the answers to my questions.
Thank you. I have one more question.
So before you ask that, so it's also self-respect. And that might be the most important thing that everyone's getting from a doctorate. I mean, even just going downstairs and going to my bookshelf and approaching any book, I can say I've got a doctorate. I can read any of these books on the shelf and understand something from them. I have a little like Erin said, some confidence that you have. You don't want to be arrogant to yourself, but you want to have some self-assuredness once in a while. That these opportunities that will arise, and opportunities will arise, that you're qualified to apply for some of them. Not everyone, but you're qualified to apply for more than before you got the doctorate. There's so many more opportunities that from grants possibilities to collaborate and partner. People won't even bother typically to ask you to partner on a grant if you don't have a doctorate. With the doctorate, they'll ask you. They won't ask Erin to write a book chapter in their book, typically, if she doesn't have that doctorate. Now they've asked, she's doing a book chapter possibly for that one book. So, they won't ask you to go to the summer retreat at Oxford, and hang out with folks in downtown for a week. If you didn't have that doctorate, there's no way you would get that invite. They might have a special colloquium on, qualitative researchers, which they do. And a couple of my students have gone to Oxford or Cambridge. I've gone to both for different reasons. I never would have been invited to speak at Oxford or Cambridge without the the doctorate or the, in my pocket. So in opportunities to work with other people, the students that you meet, the young people would never approach you in LinkedIn and try and, if you didn't have that doctorate. So there's all sorts of connections that just happen because, they will actively search for a person with a doctorate that's got an expertise in something and ask them a question and you form a relationship. They would never have found you otherwise. I hate to say it, but it just, as Erin said, it just opens so many different doors and possibilities. And in fact, it gives you kind of some confidence if you want to do what a lot of these young people are doing, take a year off and then go back and there'll be a possible job for you somewhere. You have more, assurance that you're qualified to rejoin the workforce if you take a sabbatical or lay off and just meditate with monks in Thailand, which I've also wanted to shave my head and go move to Thailand. This is where I got the jacket, so I can hang out with my pink suit coat. No, this is Vietnam. But anyway, same thing. They have monks in Vietnam as well. So it was a great question, Sume, and there's so much more. As this is just skimming the surface, this is just an initial answer. If we had time, we could literally list gobs and gobs of pages with the opportunities and the reasons why one would complete the doctorate. Your second question, Sunmi.
Actually, it's a personal question. So actually, you said that you worked as a full-time and then you have children, right? So, yeah. So how to handle it, everything? I have, same. I'm on the same situation. So sometimes I feel lonely. That's because, I don't have any friends, around me. Just, housewife, just they support their children. But actually I'm working and I'm studying and then I have 2 children. So how do you handle?
You need to move to the Midwest because there's a special tax law in Indiana where you can sell your children to someone for a few years and then buy them back.
Oh, really?
You get a tax credit on that. No? Erin, you didn't have that? Okay.
No.
Please do that. Please do that. Amazing.
Well, when you get on the other side of it, I don't know how old your kids are, but I know 4 years later, after I finished the dissertation, my kids definitely remember me sitting at my desk for long, long hours, studying hard. And they look at that time, I think, with pride. They talk about being proud of their mom and how hard she worked. And now when they see good things happening in my life and in our family's lives, they connect that to working at your education. So in their minds, they're making the connection that if I work at my education and I study hard, good things happen. So I think there is a lesson that they pick up from observing your hard work that is really hard for kids to learn any other way. So kudos to you for trying to balance it all. I know it's a challenge, but it's for a season.
That's a great answer, I think. Yeah, that's a really great lesson. I think that sometimes, I talk to myself. Anyway, I'm studying, so I can tell my children, oh, you have to study. That's because mom is studying. That's great. Thank you.
So your kids might be similar in age. Sunmei's got teenagers, right? Sunmei?
Yeah.
Maybe one's getting ready for college soon?
Yeah, this year. Yeah, this for so 1 month left.
And Erin, are yours going to college yet or not?
Yeah, I have 1 out of college and 2 in college right now. But when I was studying, they were 12 to 17 in that range.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, mine is 13. The other one is 10.
Well, Isha, I think Sunmei has a couple of kids she's willing to drop off if you need some more.
Seriously?
Other questions for Erin?
I have a question regarding the leadership thing. So I know you switched from the higher ed, then moved to a company. I'm just curious how you manage a team. Like, what is your leadership style? Sometimes I struggle, communicating some ideas to my team. And just feel like, I don't know whether it's just like they don't have instructional design background, all of that. So I'm just curious about how you manage a team. You
tell her where you are and where you work at.
So I am in Chicago. I work at a private Catholic university. south side of Chicago. It's called St. Xavier University. So I started with as an instructional designer, but then later all my boss left. So then I become the boss. So then later I received a grant, so expanded my team. But I just feel like recently I've been struggling with, I want to do more instructional design work, but then because of my leadership responsibility, I can't communicate with faculty on course design. I enjoy that piece. But now it's like, should I go back to instructional design or should I continue with the leadership? So I'm just curious about your career, choice and your leadership style.
Yeah, it is definitely a choice. And there are days when I miss the hands-on in the weeds with a faculty member, coming up with a great assignment, making it creative. There's a lot of fun and energy that comes from that. And as you become a leader, you definitely get a lot less of that, if any. So right now, the thing that brings me energy is listening to my team share their best ideas and creativity and helping to solve challenges together. So I get energy from listening to them collectively, collaboratively try to solve one another's problems and help them and come up with great ideas that I never would have come up with on my own. So I do think it's a process of balancing, like one of the things I'm learning as a leader is to balance building culture, which is a lot about, or shaping the culture of a team, which is a lot about relationships and building trust and helping people feel welcome and included and like their ideas matter. So that's a lot of the emotional intelligence skills of leadership. You're balancing that with things like delegation and project management and staying on a timeline and having a project plan that's well-defined and making sure that we're all meeting objectives, which is a very kind of like quantitative way of leading. And you have to have both. So it's this constant balancing act of making everybody feel good about being on the team, but also we have to get a lot of work done. So we've got to get on task. And I think as you work with people, you learn their level of need. Sometimes we come into the meeting and I can tell they just need time to connect over Zoom because we're all remote. And sometimes I come into the meeting and they seem pretty relaxed and we're just going to zip through our agenda, boom, 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 and we're going to be very task oriented that day. But I think it just takes time to kind of intuit what your team needs.
Mm-hmm. Do you cultivate like talents in your team? Do you hire more experienced employees or more like novice? You can train them.
Yeah, so I find, at least for us, as our team grows, I have like one senior instructional designer who has a lot of different skills. He has a very broad skill set, everything from writing the code and software development and making changes to the LMS to assignment design and everything in between. As our company grows and his time becomes less and less available, I have to take responsibilities off his plate and hire people for those tasks specifically. So that's how I grow my team. I say, Nick, what do you want as the senior instructional designer? What do you want to let go of so that we can put you on more projects so you can keep doing what you're good at and what you're most passionate about? But what can I hire someone else to do to take something off your plate because we have to grow? So I give him the autonomy to choose what he wants to let go of and then hire people to fill those responsibilities. Because I think when you work with highly qualified folks, he has a master's degree in instructional design. When you work with knowledge workers and you lead them, you have to give them that sense of autonomy and ownership.
Well, thank you. This is really good advice.
Any final questions for her before Erin leaves tonight? Anyone's holding back? Now's the time to ask.
You guys have had great questions. This was fun.
Yeah, well, Ben's going to be the one that we're going to hear about his dissertation idea tonight and critique it. So before you go, Erin, Ben, why don't you unmute your mic and just tell Erin what your dissertation idea is and see her reaction to it and see if she has any advice before we open up for the whole class.
Sure. So I am an instructional support specialist who supports a physician assistant program and a college pharmacy program. So believe it or not, the phenomena I'm starting with is that half of the PA faculty who come in and take a teaching role have no background in education. So there's no completion of a residency. There's literally no training day one. So I'm thinking about two different routes. I'll just do the one that I think has more promise, see what you think. So I came across the term constructive alignment. So similar to instructional alignment, like brass tacks, just making sure your objectives align with your instruction, align with your assessment. So I am just curious about PA faculty and PA administration's take on this important concept. With half of your faculty not having any background in education, I'm just wondering if they know about it, how they approach writing an objective. Are they conscious that that should tie to how you're teaching that? And then how should you assess that? So I think I would just be gathering perceptions, but hopefully kind of put a ribbon on the dissertation, but continue with some spin-off projects from there.
So the gathering of perceptions and kind of like a qualitative analysis of their perceptions would be your dissertation kind of outcome deliverable?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any suggestions for Ben or things you might contemplate?
Have you found any frameworks that are useful that other people have created?
So I think the instructional alignment, I think that was Cohen. I found a Cohen article about the instructional alignment, and then Biggs came along with the more constructive alignment piece. So I think in that sense, I don't know if I would call it a framework necessarily, but at least an approach. It's pretty, I found a couple articles that one article was saying that an aligned course typically has a better outcome for students, and they were putting it as a 4-to-1. It was 4 times more effective if everything was aligned.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I guess not necessarily one neat framework, but more of a patchwork of articles I found so far.
Yeah. I think it's a relevant topic for sure.
Okay, now tell her what your population size is that you're thinking about.
Oh, so that's a good question. So I guess it would depend. Here's where I'm very wishy-washy, like the best approach. So if it was more just stick with perceptions, I'm hoping that I can get in with the PAEA, the organization that oversees all of the PA programs. So we could go pretty large with the survey, I would hope. Just my personal preference, I would like to do some interviews. So I would see it, depending on which methodology we go with, maybe just focus on PA schools in the Midwest. Try to limit it that size and just do a handful of interviews.
That makes more sense. Now, before she goes, tell her what your other option was, so I can at least have you explicate it in front of someone else besides all of us. So try and talk about the second option before she goes.
So again, still PA faculty coming in. So I found a lot of literature. Actually, it was the PAEA came up with teacher competencies. So here's what we would expect from our PA faculty. And I won't share my screen now, but
go ahead and share your screen. Let's see it. Yeah.
See if I can.
This sounds like what Erin's expertise is, actually.
Oh, okay, then perfect. Let's see if I can. Oh, share screen.
Do I need to make you a host? Nope, you got it.
Here we go. Coming over.
Pink Day.
Yeah, Pink Day. It's Pink Day.
Yeah. So it is interesting. Just teaching in general, there's so much that people can focus on and lose the big picture. And to back up a little bit, one of the reasons I love the idea of focusing on alignment, it tells a complete picture for a new teacher. you've got to come up with an objective, then you're going to teach it, you're going to assess it, and then we're going to put it all together. And then at least they have that basic framework to hang their newly acquired skills on. Like, oh, well, that really worked well with instruction, but hopefully see how that fits into the bigger picture. But anyway, idea number 2, somebody comes in and they are handed this document. Coming down. Here's what we would expect from you. So I think a nice follow-up to this with the PAEA, instead of like these 9 large and then the subcategories, for your first quarter or your first semester, what would we expect you to be proficient at first? So again, surveys or interviews, perceptions with the stakeholders, with PA faculty, administrators. Of these things, what is most important for our new faculty to approach first?
So did you say in your setting, your new faculty, do they get these educator competencies at all right now?
Now, see, that's a good question. I know at my institution, they do not.
See, what I think would be super interesting for the PAEA community is to compare some outcomes of faculty who receive these competencies, and all we ask them to do is self-assess yourself on these competencies, compare something related to their instruction with faculty who never receive anything. They have no awareness of the competence, which is your current state. So you're not shortchanging anyone. It's your current state versus asking new faculty to self-assess in some way. And then look for some evidence of some sort, either from their classroom instruction or from their student feedback, that just doing the self-assessment made a difference or not.
That's good. Yeah. Okay.
That's why I tell people when you're working on dissertation proposal ideas, try and flesh out 2 of the ideas. And the first one might not be the one you go with. Try and go with the one that's more creative, so that has some impact. And I'm sure Erin would be happy to answer questions later on email. So if you want to flip,
especially competencies, that's my world. I love competencies.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. So she'll take over grading too.
No.
So Ben, tell her what institution you work for.
So I'm with Sullivan University in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay, great.
How big is that Sullivan University? 2,000 students, 4,000 students? What is it?
With all of the colleges, I would still put us under 2,000, less than 2,000. Yeah.
And how big is Indiana Wesleyan, your former place, Erin?
It's about 9,000 students.
And how many are graduate students up there now? I know it was growing.
Yeah, I don't know the graduate student split, but it's about 2,000 face-to-face traditional undergrad, and then the rest are all a variety of online.
And they're advertising all over the state. Erin, so you can take off the share, Ben, and I'll just open up to the other students for feedback, and we'll take a break after that. Erin, we'll say goodbye to you now, and thank you for coming and sharing everything with us tonight, Erin.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to do it anytime. Thank you all. It's good to meet you.
I hope to see you in Bloomington, and I will invite you down when day 1001 running is on a Friday night, December 16th, my birthday. So you can meet some of the students who are in Bloomington who are going to come to that, and we'll chat. So we'll try and bring Erin back at the end. We can share a little bit what we did, and maybe you can come when Ben's presenting his final project to us. So
thank you all.
Thank you. See you, Erin. So anyone else have some initial comments or feedbacks or questions for Ben? What would you like to know? What didn't he frame up for us there? What is he going to be challenged with? What do you think? Access to populations comes to mind immediately. And so that's something you want to start at least getting lists of where the populations, what universities might be possible in the context there. That's one thing. Second is you're going to really want to think about your research questions and not have them be the obvious evaluation study kinds of things. Want to be a little more impactful and insightful. You can start with the bare basic factual kinds of questions that you shouldn't end up there. So I can see those are two things at least that come to mind that will be a challenge for you this semester, but not impossible. But it's something very doable. Other issues or questions for Ben?
Is it okay to share my screen? I had some possible questions.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then there also might be programs that are online versus face-to-face. Do you want to only deal with those working in online environments, or only those in face-to-face, only those in blended? Does that matter? You know.
Yeah.
That's a lot of questions.
I was going to say, definitely not doing 7 questions. I put an asterisk by the ones that I'm leaning towards, but wanted to put like my whole brainstorm on there.
I have a question though. Why do you have how? Is there a way you can adjust them from how to what? You know, things like that. It's like, I don't know. You might laughing, but yeah. That's the first thing that jumped out to me. Is there a way you can amend those particular ones you're talking about? Adjust them instead of just being just how the, you know.
I would avoid what as well, Ishat. What questions aren't going to cut it if I'm on the dissertation defense anyhow, but
okay.
You know, because that gets that factual. It doesn't have to get it factual, but I think you want something a little bit more complex in nature. Yua, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the course alignment. Is it similar like a backward design model? You develop from your objectives, use Bloom's taxonomy, develop more measurable objectives, and you develop your, what you call like a materials and assessment align with your objectives. Is that the course alignment?
Yes, yeah.
I see. I don't know whether it's a good idea to bring that idea in there, because one instructional designer work with faculty member, they actually bring backward design models. So there will be like different models, but I actually have a topic before for my dissertation, but I kind of give it up, was like the barrier and benefits of using this backward design model. I don't know whether that's a good one. I didn't bring up to Dr. Bonk, or he didn't review it, but I'm just curious whether, you know, some faculty may, you know, if you start with defining a like objectives, do you consider all your students or all of that? So I don't know whether like overlook of student personality or character, will that be just in my thought, I haven't do any research on that. So I don't know whether that can be a, you know, question. What are the benefits or barrier for using the course alignment or, you know, backward design model?
Mm-hmm.
I think you got a dissertation, Yua, on that topic, but you know, well, it depends on whether backward design is being implemented in a wide scale, not in a small scale. You know, if it's a one-off department, is that important to be looking at? But if it's utilized in many places, then yeah, you got that. Then let's read through these each one by one. How are faculty working in physician assistant programs approaching course alignment in their course? How are they approaching it? So instead, you can ask, to what degree are they approaching it, or what are the challenges? There we get at what Aisha asked. What are the challenges faculty members are faced with when faculty in physician assistant programs face when attempting to align their courses, when attempting a course alignment, I guess. You have to get more specific than that. So, but I mean, there's a lot of ways to phrase this, and that's just off the top of my head. It's going to take a couple months probably to get this. How are physician assistant programs ensuring course alignment in their courses coordinated by new faculty? No.
Okay, yeah.
No, don't delete it. How are they assuring it? What are mechanisms for ensuring course alignment in PA assistant programs? Being taught by, go ahead, Aisha.
No, I was wondering, is this an opportunity, an avenue for him to put like a comparison thing? So that just as you said, alignment then between old as well as new faculty members? Or would that be going outside what you want?
That's a good question, and I'm writing that one down too. I think overall, I guess I'm curious, is it being used at all? Like there's nothing that I found that would assume that a new faculty member is using backwards design or ensuring any level of alignment.
Because there are some big new ones that might come maybe based on their experience, they have that, or based on education, they have that. Meanwhile, old ones will be, maybe they've not had that experience or that knowledge, or they're not willing to change. That might be something to look at.
That's good. Yeah.
So we're at number 3 here. How do experiences of a new faculty member affect their, experience is a kind of general term. What experiences, again, it's another what question though. And that's more longitudinal in nature. You have to follow people through for a longer period of time answering that kind of a question, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd almost delete number 3. What do other people think? Kim, what do you think? Delete number 3?
So I guess I'm a little bit like, is there a reason why you can't use how as the verb? Maybe I'm just a little lost on that. Because, you know what I mean?
Oh no, what I was saying was everything came to like how. I don't know if you can remember the course we took. We had that class together. Something about research question, repeating the same, is like you're asking the same question the same way, different way, just use another verb to give another format, That was why I said the hows were too much. There's nothing wrong with how. It's a perfectly perfect verb.
So maybe going along with what you were saying, Aisha, maybe instead of the how do experiences of new faculty affect their course alignment, I feel like that might be a redundancy of number 2.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. So I guess my thing is, and maybe, so I'm looking back to slide 1. Did you go, and I apologize, I had to step out. I had to talk to another faculty member here. Did you go over any of the theories that are grounding your research or guiding your research by any chance, Ben?
Yeah, I talked briefly, and again, I don't know if it would be defined as a theory, but I found the term instructional alignment.
Okay.
And then that led me to, I think that was Cohen, and then that led me to constructive alignment, which was, I have too many articles. Yeah, yeah, but so instructional alignment in the literature was behaviorist. Like there was an emphasis on the stimuli has to be the same in instruction and assessment. And then constructive alignment still puts an emphasis on that backwards design piece where everything should be connected, but allows for constructivist principles to be used in the decision making.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 4, just delete. I don't think anyone in the IST department wants to be on a dissertation where one's looking at writing objectives. anymore? That was a good question in the 1960s and 50s, but today I think objectifying the objectification of education is problematic. I'm not saying it couldn't be a research question, but I'm just saying it would be kind of boring for you and be boring for us to read about.
I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. So it eliminates one of the 7 questions. So, we can get rid of a couple.
We got
number
plenty.
5. Yeah, you got plenty. Okay, you can have twice as many by the time we're done. How are new faculty members and physicians choosing their instructional materials? That's a similar question to the previous one, and then we can delete that too. However, if you want to get at the what types of professional development activities exist for physicians assistants to help in their design of courses. And, that might be interesting to find out their own professional development venues. And I was going to ask Erin about that, to be honest. I forgot I had it on the list. So, instead of asking what they're doing and how they're doing it, it'd be asking about the training that led to it. So you could be understanding and getting at the resource support and the training that other people could then create and design that would help others. They would have some bang for the buck. You could utilize that and do something with it. So that's number 7. How do new faculty members at physician assistant program perceive the concept of course line? Now that's your best question so far. So you're getting at perceptions, which is often the case. It's just like when you come up with a title for an article, it's often the 10th title you choose. It's often the best one you came up with because your thoughts evolve as you write down questions, you write down areas. So yeah, I like this one. It's going to have to be refined, but definitely keep number 7. Well, if you go with your first research topic, right? These questions are from your first research topic, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if you decide to do number 2, then we'll have to change these around. I'm done asking. We're going to go to break, but I want to see if 1 or 2 more people want to ask a question or give advice before we do so.
Oh, actually, maybe I missed something. So first of all, what is your problem statement? Just to you think that new faculty member at PA program doesn't know about, doesn't have any education background? Is that your problem statement? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
But what is the problem with the new faculty member who don't have, education background? Does it affect the, negatively on the, their teaching performance, or I don't know. I'm just curious about the first time.
Yeah, I have thought about that. So I think one thing too, so in our experience, and this is just my experience, so I am the one of 2 instructional support specialists, and then we're really the only 2 with a background in education to support all the faculty members. So for both of us, we can fix just about anything else if things are at the same level. Like, so if the objective is written correctly and then taught at the appropriate level, then we could come help with an assessment that would be appropriate. Where we run into issues is after the fact, if things aren't within that same depth of knowledge, it's really hard to go back to try to fix that. So, for example, if we are asked to support a new course and it's a knowledge level objective, it was taught in a lecture, but then all of a sudden the assessment jumps up to a simulation. That piece is very hard for us to fix, because at that point it's just part of what they're used to doing. That's part of the course.
So it's kind of working performance is low because of the new faculty members' lack of education background. Is that correct?
Could you say it one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just I feel that actually you work with the new faculty member to design the new course, right? And then they don't have any educational background or instructional design background, right? So they don't know about how to do that, right? So you have to support everything. So for example, it takes time, it takes more time, more effort, and then later just it takes more time to fix or update, something like that. So it's a kind of a problem for your side, right? Not faculty side. I don't know. Just
No, yeah, and it's a really good point, and that might be another question. At least in our experience, and this might be other programs. I've tried to find research around how many PA programs have instructional designers, and I'm not sure the numbers on that, but there are courses. Not to tell on my program too much. There are definitely courses that have been designed by someone without an educational background.
I'm wondering whether you can expand it to like collaboration between instructional designer and the PA to see whether it's impact the course outcome.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Good point.
That's good. Yeah, writing that down. Collaboration.
I know their research because I'm also kind of in that field. I was looking at the instructional designer competency, and there's some I don't know whether it's really in physician area, but I know there are articles talking about collaboration between faculty and instructional designers. So they're talking about how they collaborate together. They didn't study the outcome, but maybe that's something you can expand the literature.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yeah,
okay. Any final thoughts here? Any volunteers for next time? Megan, Yua, Isha?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, you're on.
That'll be next Tuesday, right?
Yeah, next Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So soon maybe remind me on that. So we should take a break here for 5 to 10 minutes. I will come back with a short presentation on writing and publishing and some advices. Part 1 and 2 of my 10-part talk. I'll get through part 1 for sure, maybe part 2, and then we'll call it an evening tonight. We won't go too long beyond this. After presenting till 5 a.m. this morning, I am a little bit tired, and I'm having difficulty sitting in this chair right now. So double whammy. But let me just send this to the cloud so it's there. Stop the recording.